To which Katsuya would reply, "Yeah, let's get on that, All Might." Immediately, All Might would go on to explain to him that the first thing that he would like them to do is to figure out just how much of the quirk he can actually use, going on to explain that the quirk of One for All is a very powerful quirk in and of itself, explaining the steps to use it, with him going on to tell him that he's actually already used it in the morning. All Might would stare at him saying, "You did? And you managed to stay in one piece?" To which Katsuya would say, "Yeah, why wouldn't I?" As All Might would go on to explain that the power of One for All to any normal human who just activated all willy-nilly literally has the potential to just destroy them from the inside out. And Katsuya, hearing this, would say that it must be because he's just tough as nails. Izuku would say, "I'll say, this dude's freaking body grew 2 times its normal size, and he got crazy buff. The dude looked like he started taking Tren or something." As All Might, hearing that, would laugh, then going on to be curious as he would stare at Katsuya, asking how exactly that works, asking him to power up into it. And so we would see Katsuya closing his eyes before his transformation would begin, and we would start watching his hair elongate, nails grow, and teeth sharpen. All Might, seeing this, would get what Izuku was talking about, saying that he looked nothing like this yesterday, but admitting that due to this appearance, he'll probably be terrifying quite a few villains. And Izuku, looking at him, would say, "You think? He had me scared and I'm his big brother." To which All Might would laugh, going on to pretty much clasp his hands together, like the fist in his hand, like doing the thing that most anime characters do, before then kind of just looking at Katsuya and asking him to go for a spar, saying that it's been a while since he's been able to let loose on someone, going on to say that 20 seconds should do. And so Katsuya, staring at All Might's direction, would ask if he's truly ready for this, to which All Might would smile, telling him to go for it. And so Katsuya, lunging towards him, literally leaving a little hole imprint where the sand was where his foot was before, he would throw a punch so powerful that the trash in the area of Dagoma Beach would be sent flying backwards, and All Might, who had tanked that with both of his arms in front of him, would be feeling the pain, extending his arm and starting to shake it with a smile, saying that he's strong. At this point, Katsuya would say, "That's nothing," before going on to throw a slash with his claws, which All Might would narrowly manage to evade, some of his hair having been chipped off, before All Might would then go on to throw a smash Texas blow straight to the direction of Katsuya's stomach. He would tank the blow, being sent into some rubble, with the impact of the collision sending a bunch of debris into the air, Izuku stopping it before it can hit anybody. Before him realizing that this area is disgusting, he proceeding to use his wind quirk would cause the air around the area to start literally smashing all of the debris into these little cubes, which in turn Izuku would then float into the air, smashing together once more, creating this gigantic ball of just trash. With All Might and Katsuya stopping for a second, looking up to see that thing that's literally casting a shadow on them, and being like, "Dude, that quirk will never stop being cool." With Izuku yelling back, "Shut up and get your head back in the fight." And so Katsuya, looking back at All Might, would say, "Sorry," as he would then go and throw a punch towards the direction of All Might, showing off that, that little sibling energy of you're low-key scared of your older brother. And so with All Might then throwing his own punch, Katsuya and All Might's strength would both start to clash, with Katsuya asking the old man if he's ready for him to go full throttle. All Might would tell him that wait, but before he can, he would send All Might crashing into the ocean, into the waves, with All Might coming out shortly after, seaweed covering his head, completely wet from head to toe. Katsuya would quickly apologize to All Might, with All Might being like, "I never expected you would be that strong." As Katsuya in that moment hadn't even used 50% of the quirk yet. He was at 40% when he threw that blow at All Might, and just look at what he had done to the previous symbol of peace. And it gets even crazier when you start to think about the fact that Katsuya is only literally 13 years old, meaning that his transformed beast form, much like his usual form, is still going through puberty, which means that when he turns into a full-scale adult, not only will his terrifying form get even bigger, but even stronger as well. I can't even imagine how strong this dude would be when he reaches his physical prime. But that's besides the point. Thing that I'm trying to get to now is that with Izuku watching that battle, he would clap it up for his brother, saying that he is very strong, and he would go on to ask him if he's down to spar. Katsuya, looking at his brother, would ask if he's sure, saying that he doesn't exactly feel like hurting his brother in case he can't control his power. But Izuku, hearing that, would laugh, scoffing, saying that there's no way that he's going to be able to hurt him in that state. To which Katsuya, hearing this, would take up on that challenge and say, alright then, just don't take it too hard when little brother finally gets stronger than the big one. As suddenly, he would rush at Izuku, throwing a punch at 40% power just like he did before, as internally we would hear Katsuya thinking to himself that finally his blows are gonna land on Izuku. However, just as it was about to smash through Izuku's wind barrier that he usually keeps up when facing him, he would be sent flying away as the area itself would start to have like the sand start picking up around Izuku, as he would say, "What? You didn't think I was always using a max power barrier on you, did ya?" To which Katsuya, who in this moment is already finding it difficult to stand up, would look at his brother and just think, "You're incredible," before then thinking that he can't think like that. Right now, he's trying to beat him. So, charging up his strength and getting even more big in his little like beast transformation state, he would now have access to 70% of One For All, due to the fact that the musculature state that his body goes into when he's transformed is nearly a perfect complement to the quirk of One For All. Granted, because he does have a quirk, he's not going to gain access to the other quirks because his cup is already full, but still, just having this beast quirk with One For All is definitely going to make him, if not top 3, definitely top 5 in the verse. So, continuing his charge up, he would then lunge towards the direction of Izuku as he would throw a full power blow at the barrier, nearly breaking through and almost about to get to Izuku before his hand literally starts to feel like it's getting shredded. Izuku would have upped the power of the barrier even more, sending this man crashing, with the ocean itself starting to literally get affected by the wind pressure Izuku was created. However, Katsuya getting back up and now going full berserk mode would lunge towards Izuku, sending a max output punch towards the direction of Izuku, trying to shatter the barrier. And as it would start to do some damage to it, Izuku would smirk, with the tornado rising right underneath his brother, destroying him completely. The wind would be so powerful, going like 700 miles an hour in speed, and it's just tearing into his fur, into even his horn, leaving the boy completely knocked out, with Izuku realizing what he had just done in that moment, and his horns that had grown from him using that much power shrinking back to their usual. Since in that moment of combat, Izuku's berserker state that he never knew his quirk actually granted him access to would have just started slipping through the tiny cracks that had formed, and now rushing towards his younger brother, shaking him, going, "Katsuya! Katsuya, wake up! Damn it, Katsuya, wake up!" His brother would finally wake up about 5 minutes later, after All Might would advise him to just give him some air, and that he'll give a call to Recovery Girl if he doesn't wake up in a minute or two. The time would pass, and Katsuya would finally wake up, with Izuku looking at his brother and saying, "Dude, you nearly gave me a freaking heart attack!" His brother staring back at him and saying, "I mean, what? What do you want me to do about it? You're the one who freaking went crazy with your quirk. How the heck was I supposed to know that you had that much firepower still in the tank?" Izuku, hearing that, then remembers that, yeah, he was kind of the one that took things too far, and would go on to apologize, rubbing the back of his hair, saying that since he never gets the chance to go all out against people, the first time he got to, he guesses he let it get the better of him this time. He would promise that the next time they fight, he'll take it easier on his brother, with Katsuya saying, "No, wait, dude, I'm done fighting you. I'm little brother for a reason. I don't feel like ending up in the hospital next time." And then, holding on to some of the wounds and cuts and gashes he left him, Katsuya would weakly stand up, saying that, yeah, he's gonna go home. All Might would say that Recovery Girl's actually already on her way, and that he should wait for that to happen. And Izuku, now, finally having this whole thing finished and having a laugh at the whole situation, would then check up on his phone, then seeing that he has 7 missed calls from a specific somebody, with Izuku reading the name. Crap. Izuku in this moment would turn back towards Katsuya and All Might, saying, "All Might, think you can take my brother home? Thank you, bye," before flying off towards the direction of the mall where he was actually supposed to meet Maya at an hour ago. She would be sitting there very upset, eating a little pretzel from Wetzel's Pretzels, as Izuku landing in front of her, everybody noticing that a kid literally just flew in, would then be like, "Whoa, what quirk does he have?" To which Izuku, looking at Maya, would say, "Maya, I am so sorry. I thought that the training I was gonna do with my brother was gonna take less time, but I let it get out of hand. Maya though just kind of looks away and is like, huh, yeah, sure, just forget your friends. Why don't ya? It's always about training with ya. Can't you ever just take a day from me? You know, realizing what she had just said and be like, I mean, to hang out? As Izuku hearing that would just be like, Maya, look, I promise, how about this? This week, we'll hang out 3 times after school. And she's like, make it 4. But not this week. I'm a little busy with school. Izuku hearing that would say, oh right, speaking of school, how's that been treating you? Since Maya has actually been going to a different school. And truth be told, I low-key completely forgot that I introduced her in part 1, so that's why she had no involvement in the story for part 2. But anyways, jumping back into what she was gonna say, she would pretty much go on to tell Izuku that honestly it was a bit hard for her when she got her rejection letter from UA, but truth be told, she's pretty happy at her new school, going on to explain to Deku that she's actually found somebody that's kind of similar to him. Izuku hearing this would say, so what, you got a new crush all of a sudden? And she would say, no, wait, what? Crush? I don't know what you're talking about. To which she would then go on to say that it's not like that and that she means somebody with the wind quirk, that he's extremely impressive and very strong. She would go on to say that she has no idea why he didn't just stay at UA considering that's the school he applied for, that she found out that apparently she got in through recommendations and even got an acceptance letter but rejected it because of some kid with half and half hair. Izuku hearing that would think, Todoroki? What could have caused somebody to leave the school just because of Todoroki? But putting that in the back of his mind, he would go on to explain that yeah, UA's been pretty cool, going on to apologize again for that failed little test that they have, saying that, well yeah, the test technically would work a lot for offensive powered quirks, but for defensive powered quirks and support heroes like what he believes she can be, probably not so much. She would say it's a shame, but she would look at Izuku saying that it doesn't matter because they're gonna see each other at school hours when they make their way towards the provisional licensing exam, which will be in a few months. To which Izuku hearing this, not really wanting to spoil the surprise that he actually already has something even better than that, he would just say that he's excited to see her again, and so the two would end up having a pretty nice day, with the next day rolling around where Izuku would go on to find out about the USJ event that's actually in a few days. Izuku would get pretty excited being told that he needs his guardian to take care of that, and then afterwards Aizawa would go on to tell the class that for today though, they're going to be needing to focus on their event, explaining to them that much like their 2v2 battles they just took place in, today the class was going to be participating in a Class 1B versus Class 1B event, being told that normally they usually hold off on these until later, but since Vlad King's been insisting on this and practically pestering Nezu to do this every day, Nezu finally ended up caving into his requests. So the pairings would go as follow, kind of similarly to what takes place in season 6 of My Hero Academia, with Izuku pairing up with Kaminari, Invisible Girl or Toru, and Momo Yaoyorozu, which were all chosen at random, mind you, since I used a little random generator wheel, and I also used it for his opponents, which consists of the Pony Girl who can shoot horns, Sen Kaibara, he has like a weird quirk that allows him to turn his body into like a drill. It's actually kind of cool when you think about it. Reiko Yanagi, I think that's how you pronounce it, she pretty much has like a pretty relatively weak telekinesis quirk. She can move something about as heavy as 150 pounds with her mind. And Kojiro, you know that one dude that looked like a stick of Elmer glue? Yeah, him. He's the opponents that Izuku has to go up against. So once Izuku would see the other class and the introductions would be had, with Monoma probably being like, it's about time we got a chance to face off against each other. Can't wait to crush Class 1A. To which Izuku hearing Monoma, he would think that, yeah, that guy's annoying. But Kendo smacking him in the back of the head, causing him to shut up, would lead him to smile at Kendo, with her smiling right back at Izuku. Anyways though, the test would begin, and seeing as the goal was essentially to capture the other team's contestants, Izuku would start off by doing a little bit of reconnaissance, flying up into the air, and via the communication system that they were given thanks to UA, he would tell them exactly where their opponents are, with Class 1B having actually opted to go for more of a stay together path. So with Izuku recognizing that all of them were all in one spot, Izuku, though he knows his teammates would probably want to get involved, he would think to himself that this might just be a bit more fun. So flying down towards their direction, Izuku would come into their line of sight, with the pony girl going, "He's there!" shooting a bunch of pony little like unicorn horns towards Izuku, which Izuku would stop in their path with a slight gust of wind, him thinking that they're pretty weak. This is when Reiko would go on to use her telekinesis quirk to try to send a bit of rubble flying towards Deku. However, it wouldn't even get close to connecting, with Izuku smirking and Kojiro shooting a max power glue attack at Izuku, trying to cause him to stiffen up, but much like every other far range attack, none of them could land, with Izuku eventually creating this air cage that he would trap all of them inside of and then levitating all of them as he literally proceeds to fly them towards the direction of the cage where he has to shove them in for them to win. And seeing as none of them are able to break out of literal air, with them literally thinking that this guy's a quirk very similar to one of their classmates who has the ability to literally harden air, they'd be like, "Dude, this thing is so hard," with Kaibara, the dude with the drill quirk, be like, "This thing is made out of steel, what the heck? I can't even pierce it with my quirk." With Class 1B being completely unable to break through, they would eventually be eliminated, with Momo, Kaminari, and Invisible Girl all being visibly saddened by this. "We didn't even get to do anything," Momo would say, as Izuku hearing this would feel pretty bad, saying that he's sorry. He guesses he took things a bit too far. But before Izuku could say any more, all of a sudden one of Class B's contestants would say, "What? You guys are sad? We got taken out by one of your members, and in record time! The dude defeated us in all of 2 minutes!" And Izuku hearing this would have a little bit of a cocky grin on his face, but then realizing that yeah, he's kind of like outperforming his classmates a little bit too much and next time he should probably just hang back, Izuku would look at his classmates saying sorry, that the next time they have a little event, he swears he'll hold back. So this is when the day would finish and everybody else would partake in their own little events, as we would then end up getting the next event to come into the story, which would be the USJ event. And seeing as it only starts to get interesting once Kurogiri arrives, let's just skip to that. Immediately, a purple warp gate would arrive into the USJ, with the students all staring at it wondering what the heck this is about. But as Kurogiri would begin to speak, it would become increasingly obvious to Izuku that this is a villain. So immediately jumping into the action, Izuku cupping both of his hands together, he would shoot a tornado out of his palms, as it would instantly blow Kurogiri as far as possible from the students, although while Aizawa would lunge downwards to where the villains are at and would begin taking charge, with the Pro Hero 13 saying, "Everybody out of here!" She would attempt to open the doors, but realizing that they were jammed shut and locked, she would use her black hole quirk to create an opening. However, just as that would be formed, Kurogiri would appear at the entrance saying, "I'm sorry, heroes, but I can't let..." However, before he could even finish that sentence, Izuku would start compressing him with air, crushing that metal portion of Kurogiri's body, with Kurogiri screaming, "What's happening to me? How is this possible? He's compressing air around me and crushing me slowly." And as Kurogiri would find himself unable to even use his quirk to warp gate out of there, Izuku's hand would be held stretched out, as Izuku, knowing that he needs to help Aizawa because he's starting to literally become overwhelmed by the villains, Izuku would shoot a tornado of wind towards the direction of a massive group of them, knocking a few out with that attack as Izuku would continue crushing Kurogiri with his left hand. It's at this moment that Kurogiri would finally pass out into unconsciousness and the students would all exit the area. At this, the Pro Hero 13 would thank Izuku, saying that he needs to come along with them and that the rest of the heroes will arrive shortly after. However, Izuku wasn't playing those games. He would tell 13 that he's technically a hero, before flying down to where Aizawa is, landing with the most superhero-esque landing ever, shooting a wave of wind that barely dodges Aizawa by a hair, causing his hair to literally start rising up without him even using his quirk. In this moment, he would tell Aizawa to blink already, as he would deactivate his quirk, and in an instant, by the time he would open his eyes, all the villains that were surrounding him would have been taken care of. Izuku, now rising back up to his feet, would stare towards Shigaraki, asking if he's the big bad guy, or if it's that muscle brain over there. In this moment, Shigaraki would stare back at Izuku, as scratching at his neck a little bit, he would think, "Master didn't tell me someone this powerful would be attending UA High. Well, I guess Nomu's gonna have to handle that. Nomu, kill the brat." Almost instantaneously at that command, the Nomu would lunge towards the direction of Izuku. However, his wind barrier activating the moment Izuku sensed danger, he would shred the Nomu's hand completely, him having used his advanced shield, considering these aren't friends or allies, but villains trying to kill them. So with the Nomu continuing to attempt to press forward, its arm completely shredding, Shigaraki would watch, screaming, "Nomu, pull back!" The Nomu would leap backwards as Shigaraki would say, "And just what the heck was that, kid? How did you manage to create a wind vortex sharp enough to destroy the Nomu?" But Izuku saying nothing and simply staring at his opponents, taking them seriously, he would watch on as the Nomu's arm would instantly regenerate the moment Aizawa would blink. And with Izuku realizing that this thing had regeneration, he would be stunned as he would look towards the direction of Aizawa, telling him to undo the erasure effect and to handle this guy, that he'll personally take care of the Nomu. But Aizawa would answer back, telling him that there's no way in the world he's gonna be doing that. And Izuku, knowing that his sensei would probably have said that, would simply smirk, saying that he guesses he did ask for too much, raising his right hand as the Nomu would suddenly start being floated up by a gust of tornado that's lifting him, and with the Nomu completely unable to use its limbs to move around in the air, Izuku would raise it higher and higher, before yelling at Shigaraki to pay attention and sending a wind dragon towards its direction. A gigantic kaiju dragon would appear, barely visible to the human eye, which would tear into the Nomu, tearing it to shreds, and as pieces of the Nomu's body would begin falling to the ground, Izuku, creating a gigantic kaiju version of himself, would clap, literally smashing the Nomu within his hands like a mosquito, little bits of it splattering on it as the remaining little tidbits of it would suddenly be blown away by the wind, with bits and pieces of the Nomu being sprinkled a little here and a little there. At this, Shigaraki would watch on in disbelief, with Izuku smirking at the villain and asking him if he still has any intentions on facing him in a real fight. Shigaraki would take 2 steps back, feeling more fear at Izuku in this moment than he ever had for All Might. He would watch as Izuku's hand would start to get lifted, him about to shoot a flying tornado towards its direction to send the villain into next week. However, before the attack would land, a black sludgy-like thing would cover Kurogiri and Shigaraki, with the two of them then being teleported away instantly, as Izuku would be left there standing, with Aizawa just staring at the young prodigy, thinking that this kid is genuinely going to rise to the highest ranks of heroics. But since he's still his homeroom teacher, he can't let him know that quite yet. He would stare at the boy, telling him that that was utterly reckless and there was no reason he needed to involve himself in that fight. To which Izuku, then staring towards Aizawa, would remind him that he's part of the mini pro hero program, with Aizawa telling him to show him his license then, knowing that the boy still had yet to receive it. And with Izuku looking at Aizawa knowing he knew that, he would go on to tell him that his license was going to be arriving in just a few days. What's the big deal? He just handled the entire villain operation all by himself. Aizawa should be singing his praises right now. However, Aizawa would do just the opposite, with his hair lifting, telling Izuku that as long as he's part of his classroom, he's still under his jurisdiction, and to not forget that. As Izuku would snarl at Aizawa, with his left horn growing a bit longer than usual. Aizawa would question what the heck that was, since his quirk had been cancelled in that moment, so there should have been no way that any aspect of it should have worked, but it did. And unknown to both of them, that would have just been a taste of what was to come for Izuku, because the boy wasn't merely born with one quirk, but 2.
I am here! Thanking you for making it to the end of the video. Remember to leave a like, subscribe, and share it with a friend, and stay plus ultra!